Hey, there is my fellow camper. So glad you've made it out into nature and into the green. Green is such a beautiful color. It is one of my favorites, to be honest. I love green and burnt orange and honey yellow. Such beautiful colors out there in the woods and forests. I hope you're keeping warm. It's still pretty chilly this time of year as spring hasn't quite arrived. Here, sit by the fire. I have a warm mug of cocoa right here for you. And while you relax, let me tell you about Moonville Tunnel. First, do you know of Zaleski State Forest? It is Ohio's second largest forest. At this state forest, there is a backpacking trail called the Slind Rosenberg Memorial Backpacking Trail, which is 29 miles long. This state forest also has a shooting range, paper targets only, of course, and it's also home to the only state-owned sawmill, along with a grouse and turkey management area. There is also an area called the Honor Forest, which is pretty interesting. When someone goes above and beyond in regards to conservation or forestry preservation, a tree is planted in their honor. Pretty nice, right? You don't hear about those things too often. The Honor Forest is located near one of the Adina's burial ground. And if you remember from my previous story, the Adina's people were the earliest known Americans who had lived in the area of Ohio all the way back to 1400 BC. And then there's Moonville Tunnel, located within Zaleski State Forest on the Moonville Rail Train. Moonville Tunnel is part of the B&O Abandoned Railroad. As of today, Moonville, Ohio is an absolute ghost town. At its most popular, Moonville only boasted about 100 people, and that was in the 1870s. But that number came and went when the coal mining industry fizzled out. You see, the only purpose of Moonville's minor popularity was the railroad that was built as a way to transfer goods in a speedy manner to places like Cincinnati. But when the coal industry declined, families packed up and moved, with the last known residents to leave Moonville in 1947. But the tunnel is a different story. You see, the living residents may have left, but the ghosts stayed. The first recorded death occurring in Moonville Tunnel was believed to be that of a conductor. Some believe it to be over a love affair between the conductor and an engineer's wife. Bottom line, something or someone got that conductor out of the train and convinced him to go underneath the train. Then, while he was under there, the train kicked into gear, killing the conductor instantly. Was it a plot by the angered engineer or just a horrible accident? Unfortunately, that conductor met his demise on those train tracks, and people have been seeing this conductor's ghost since the 1890s. Another ghost, who is the most popular, is that of a brakeman. Now, the job of a brakeman is pretty straightforward. They would be stationed at the back of the train and would help slow the train down by pulling on the brakes. Sometimes the brakeman would have to jump from train car to train car and apply the brakes in each car. Brakemen would use hand signals and lights to communicate with each other and with the conductor of any issues that might occur. This was a dangerous job. Our legend tells of a brakeman who was walking home after one too many drinks at the local bar. He was making his way down through Moonville Tunnel. Meanwhile, a train was fastly approaching behind him. The brakeman waved his lantern frantically to get the conductor's attention, but the train was not able to stop, and the brakeman was struck, killing him by decapitation. Even in death, this brakeman continues to try and get anyone's attention he can. In 1981, the railroad had to put in designated signals because so many trains were putting on their emergency brakes. Why, you may ask? Because even today, engineers spot the frantic flashing lights of a brakeman on the tracks. Railmen are now advised to only pay attention to the designated signals. There is another story of another brakeman, or he might have been a miner. We're not sure at this point, as the story is very old. Either way, being a brakeman or a miner was not an easy job, especially in the cold winter months of Ohio. To help combat the coldness, these brakemen would take sips, and I use that term loosely. They would take sips of whiskey or rye to keep themselves warm. When they weren't required to be on the outside of the trains, they would go back inside the nice warm car. There, they would take a few more sips and then go back outside to slow down the train as needed. So these men would go from freezing cold to hot train cars, all the while drinking whiskey. And remember, these trains are moving really fast, so that cold was extremely cold. And I think we know just what happens to the body while you're drinking and going from hot to cold to hot to cold. Well, this brakeman, after working a long shift, went and spent some time at the local saloon. While playing cards and continuing his sippin', the brakeman excused himself to go outside. It is said that he was in such a state that he wandered out onto the train tracks to relieve himself. Apparently, this brakeman was in such a stupor that he didn't even hear the train rushing upon him. Before the brakeman could make a move, the train hit him. It hit him so fast that he didn't even have time to, compose himself. He laid there, dead and exposed, until his body was discovered the next day. There is another sighting, this one of a woman with long hair and dressed in old-timey clothes. They say you will smell lavender when she is around, and it is speculated that she was out picking wild lavender when she got trapped on the tunnel. They also say that she may be the one who throws pebbles at sightseers who linger too long on the tunnel. It is known that 26 people have died in this tunnel. One man was jumped and attacked on his way home on those tracks. He had been left there to die, with his body being discovered the next day after being run over by several trains. Another man, by the name of Charles Ferguson, was crossing the tracks one night. He waited till the oncoming train passed before crossing. Oddly, a section of the train somehow had become uncoupled. Charles, having believed the train had passed, stepped onto those tracks as the second half of the train struck him from behind and killed him. Strange that this uncoupled part of the train came apart with no discernible reason. And stranger still that when this man, Charles, crossed the tracks, he didn't even hear or see it coming. Unfortunately, our last recorded death is also the youngest. In 1986, a 10-year-old girl was struck by a CSX train while crossing the Raccoon Creek. Now, all that remains of Moonville is the tunnel and the cemetery. The cemetery now only consists of 13 known grave sites. Many have been destroyed, and those 13 that remain are just remnants, their names having faded away with neglect and time. If you're looking for a less mountainy camping spot, you'll be happy to know that in Adams County, Ohio, at the edge of the Appalachian Plateau, is a man-made structure, roughly a quarter-mile long, and was created in the shape of a serpent, and is called Serpent Mound. This effigy was believed to have been created by the Fort Ancient peoples around 1000 to 1500 AD. However, in 2014, radiocarbon dates suggest the Serpent Mound was created by the Adena people around 300 BC. Located close to the mound are 3 burial mounds. 2 were created by the Adena culture and 1 by the Fort Ancient peoples. Additional research is currently being done to confirm the origins of this impressive creation, but it is clear that this area was of great importance to many different peoples throughout the ages. The Serpent Mound begins with a large head and an eye at the top, sometimes referred to as an egg. There are a number of theories as to the purpose of this Serpent Mound. Some believe that since its head aligns with the summer solstice sunset and the tail, which is coiled 3 times, pointing towards the winter solstice, that it was used to mark times and seasons. Other theories say that the mound was a compass, as it slightly imitates the Draco constellation. The Serpent Mound of Adams County is actually one of 9 serpent mounds. They vary slightly in size and shape, and maybe we can chat about their significance at a later campfire. Something interesting about this Ohio Serpent Mound is the fact that it was created and positioned right in front of a confirmed impact crater. The meteor hit what is now Adams County, Ohio, about 300 million years ago, creating a valley 4 miles wide. Referred by geologists as the Serpent Mound disturbance, with no confirmed explanation of the Serpent Mound, and the fact that it was created next to this crater gives way to numerous conspiracy theories. Is it early man's interpretation of Halley's Comet, what at one point was called the blazing serpent in the sky? Is it a representation of the horned serpent of the indigenous peoples? Or is this an extension of the Mississippian serpent? Or still, could this be some form of communication with an alien species? There are some who believe the mound was created as a marker for aliens to land their spaceships and either refuel or collect people and supplies. Whether you believe it to be a spiritual calendar, a representation of Halley's Comet, or even a pit stop for aliens, you cannot ignore the oddities that happen to some who visit Serpent Mound. The rock beneath Serpent Mound contains a high concentration of iridium, which is a hard, silvery white metal. It is used for making pen tips and for the contacts and spark plugs and other metal objects. Iridium is one of the rarest elements found in the earth, and it is collectively believed that it was brought to Earth by the same asteroid that killed the dinosaurs. Was what hit Ohio a piece of that asteroid? Is this why, out of all the creatures ancient peoples revered, they chose a snake? We know snakes and dinosaurs are not of the same species, but for those ancient people, is it possible they saw similarities in the serpent and dinosaur? Now, a number of people, when visiting Serpent Mound, report that their phones will shut off and then turn back on, or that different apps will turn on and turn off when they're walking Serpent Mound. Other electronic devices will also act funky, turning off, turning on, making noises when they haven't been touched. Then there's the sightings. People report seeing figures. They believe these figures are to be the mound builders themselves, returning to finish their work, to make repairs, or to relieve the possible sacrifices that occurred at the head of Serpent Mound. Ohio really has some spooky sights to see, that is for sure. And fortunately, if you add the Serpent Mound to your next camping trip, you'll be happy to know there are a number of campgrounds located close by. Since there are 9 Serpent Mounds, I think the next time we visit and share another campfire, I'll tell you about those other Serpent Mounds. Now, this podcast is focused around camping, campfires, ghost stories, and legends. I would love to hear your own personal ghost stories while out camping. Please feel free to send me your personal camping stories, and they may have the chance of being shared on the podcast. Names can, of course, be omitted or changed per your request. Let's keep the traditions of campfire ghost stories alive. You can send your experiences via email to campfireghoststories8@gmail.com. That's campfireghoststories, the number 8, @gmail.com. Happy camping!